Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Carrying on with the draft preview series today, this episode will be focusing on the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if you've not checked one of these episodes out before, what I'll be doing is going through the team's primary needs heading into the draft, with free agency having essentially wrapped up at this point. Then discussing my first round mock draft pick that the team's got or been given. Going through options that will be considered, players that will likely be available for rounds 1, 2 and 3, discussing those, offering up some options, and we'll see what you guys think. So the Steelers ending into this draft, I think this is a really good overall roster. In terms of the primary team needs, a couple of maybe a bit more luxuries than some of the other teams have. I've got the quarterback spot. Roethlisberger, of course, threw out the retirement word this off-season. I don't necessarily think the Steelers will look to address it this year, but it is something that needs to be considered. Roethlisberger has taken a beating over the course of his career, a lot more than some of these, players like Philip Rivers. Well, Rivers took a beating recently, but Roethlisberger, his style of play, some of the lines that he's played behind early in his career, he's just a very beat-up quarterback. I think they do need to start considering Landry Jones, not the best backup in the world either, and I think we started to see with Roethlisberger at the end of last season, his body, I think, starting to show wear over the course of the season. I think he really struggled the last month of the season. The wide receiver spot, of course, Martavis Bryant comes back, but he's one misdemeanor away from being, potentially off the team. You've got some other guys there, but no one's really stepped up to become reliable. My worry would be if Antonio Brown, if anything were to happen to him, I think this team would really struggle at this position. If something else happens with Bryant, traditionally done a great job drafting receivers. I think they need to try and bring in somebody else, and plus you can never have too many weapons in that offense. And the other spot I've got is the defensive line, whether it's an end or another tackle. I think they need to get a bit more stout up front. I think they've got a good, talented young secondary that should continue to improve. Other than that, it's a pretty solid roster. Maybe a bit luxurious here. Steelers fans, let me know if you agree or disagree with some of these. I've been a little bit more generous, I suppose, than I have with certain other teams. So, in the first round, I've actually got them taking a corner, Tre'Davious White. Simply, I think he's pretty good value at the end of this round. They've got a young secondary. I think they just continue to bolster it. I think he'd be one of the high-rate players on their board here. Bring him in. Then hopefully, Steelers fans, they'll have a secondary that will be very, very good for years to come. In terms of other players that are going to be available, they could certainly look at the safety spot. I think there's going to be a lot of talented safeties available around this point. Obi Melifonwu may still be on the board. I think he'd be a great selection this late in the first. Possibly Budda Baker. I really like Budda Baker's tape. I think he could sneak into the end of the first. I think he'd be a nice selection. Yeah, I don't think safety's a huge need, but I think the players that may be pushed down into this range that could be seen as very good value by the Steelers. Guys like Taco Charlton, I've got no idea where he ends up going. I've got him going quite high in my mock, but you never know. He's the sort of player that could be available around here. Similar with Takaris McKinley. Go one of the defensive tackles that I've mentioned a million times now. I'm sick of mentioning them, but they're talented players. McDowell and Brantley, look at those guys here. And of course, receiver, there should be, it's pretty clear that Corey Davis and Mike Williams are likely going to be the top two guys off the board. How many other receivers go before this point, I'm not sure. Whether they want to go with Curtis Davis, or Curtis Samuel, or Smith Schuster, who I don't think they would at this point, but they can look at players like that. Who knows? Moving into round 2, this is where I think the team starts looking potentially at quarterback options. Although at the end of round 1, I could actually see them considering Mahomes or Kaiser if they're still there. Austin Webb, something about him, I just think it seems like the Steelers would think they could develop him behind Roethlisberger for a season or two. That may be someone they consider again. End of round 2 doesn't seem like a bad spot necessarily for him. If they like him as a prospect, that's probably where they would have to take him. Also looking at round 2, again, defensive lineman, we could be looking at, there's a few options, guy like maybe Keonta Davis in round 3 actually was someone I had noted down for them. Tim Williams, outside backer, he could be worth considering around here. Tyvis Bowser, he could give them some pass rush. Carlos Watkins, if they want to go with a traditional defensive lineman, or even Chris Wormley, I'm not sure he gets to them at that point. He may be worth considering. I think there'll likely be a safety fall again if they want to go for a guy like maybe Josh Jones falls here. Desmond King, I think, is a very good defensive back. I, again, don't think those guys necessarily get here, but if they do, they can look at them. Be interesting to see. Jordan Willis as well, linebacker. He could potentially go to round 1, round 2. I'm not sure. I think his stock's rising. Looking in round 3, you got a few picks here. I think they might look at a running back in the 3rd round. Of course, Le'Veon Bell's had some injuries, and there's also, if there is any kind of misdemeanor hit, a big suspension coming if he does anything again. So guys like Brian Hill, they could be looked at here in the 3rd. Marlon Mack, a lot of the names I've thrown out a lot before. You never know, they might be one of the teams in the Joe Mixon mix at possibly end of round 2. I mean, talent there, if he were available at the end of round 2, would be very tempting. This is again one of them teams that I could see taking a flyer on Sidney Jones as well if they don't go corner in round 1. In round 2, if he is still there, he'd be well worth a look. A guy like Jaleel Johnson could potentially give them a nose tackle. There's a lot of options. I think the Steelers are one of the teams that are in a pretty luxurious position where they're pretty good. I've got them taking Cooper Kupp in the 3rd. I think he'd look I think he's a Steelers type of player. I think he'd give them a very good slot receiver. Yeah, it is a team that's, I think, got a pretty luxurious position. They're pretty good roster at the moment. I do think one of the reasons they look at quarterback is simply that this team's got a young defense that should, in theory, get better, and they've still got some good weapons on offense that will be in their prime for a while. Lev Bell's still a young player. Antonio Brown's got a good few years left. If Roethlisberger does hang it up within the next 2 years, I think they do need to strongly consider having someone they can turn the reins over to. I don't think Landry Jones is that guy. So it'll be interesting to see if they do consider it at the end of round 1. Whilst I don't think it's a great year for quarterbacks, one of those guys might fall there. It only takes them to like 1. So let me know, what do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree with my assessment of the Steelers? As I say, I think this is one of the better rosters in the league right now, so they're in a pretty good spot. Just take best guy available. Let me know what you guys think, whether it's comments below. Find us on Facebook at Cover Zero. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. I'll be more than happy to try and get back to each and every one of you. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, check out some more. I'll have every team covered by the time the draft rolls around. Should be doing a special live stream for that as well, so that should be entertaining. I have a couple of mates. Always enjoy the first round of the draft. And like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, all that good stuff. Be thoroughly appreciated. Thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And as always, go Bucks.